Now, looking at passing touchdowns, this has been dominated almost from the start by Matthew Stafford and continued that way. He had another 2 touchdown passes. He now has 37. Welcome to NFL Top 10's for Thursday. My name's Ernie Jennings, and we are off to another episode of this show. Today, we're going to talk about Top 10 Power Rankings, my new Top 10 Power Ranking. And there's a little bit of a shakeup. Obviously, there were some big games last week that involved teams in the top 10, and so that caused a little bit of a shakeup. I have one new team in this list of top 10 power rankings. It was really a touch and go about who would be number 10, but got a new number 10. All right. Also, we're going to talk about some top 10 game performances that were just last week and how they compared to the rest of the season. We had only 4 really in the categories that I usually look at. One was in passing, and then the other ones were all receiving. So we'll take a look at that. And then we'll look at some season leaders in passing and running. And that should wrap it up. Had a couple of long podcasts, actually 3 in a row, 40 plus minutes and 50 minutes. So this one will be more around the 30-minute mark. So let's take off and let's get going with some of these NFL top 10s for Thursday. So like I said, we'll start with the power rankings. My top 10 after week 15. Man, we are getting close to the end of the regular season. All right, we'll start at the bottom. I introduced Houston Texans, I think for the first time, into the top 10. They're number 10. They're 9-5. You know, it was a tough one. There was them, Green Bay, a couple of the teams, but Green Bay to me, and I know they lost to the Chicago Bears, which was a good team. Or no, they lost to Denver Broncos, actually, which was a very good team, obviously. They're on way up the top of my list as far as the power rankings go. But I don't know. I don't know what to think about them. Sometimes they look pretty good, and then other times they just don't. And now, depending on Watson and, man, with losing their best defensive player as well, I don't know. And I could be wrong. We may flip-flop this again. I doubt it unless somebody, like say the Chargers or something were to lose to Dallas. They would probably drop out of the top 10, and that would probably bring Green Bay back in. But all Green Bay has to do to get back in the top 10 is beat the Chicago Bears, which has not been easy for them. So they got a tough game to play. Now, Houston Texans will probably stay in the top 10 unless some way they lose to the Las Vegas Raiders, who will only have 2 wins this year. I don't see that happening. That would be a gigantic upset and would make me look stupid that I would put Houston Texans in if they ended up losing to the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 9, Buffalo Bills. They're up 1 spot from number 10. And, I know they beat the Patriots, but honestly, it's hard to put them up over any other team in this list. Even the Patriots, I did drop the Patriots down some, but the Patriots had that game for the longest time and they let it get away from themselves. They beat Buffalo already earlier in the year, so and they still have a better record than the Buffalo Bills. So I'm going to leave the Bills at number 9. They play Cleveland at Cleveland, but they should win that game fairly easily, I would think, but we'll see. Number 8, Los Angeles Chargers. They're 10-4, moved up 1 spot as well, and they're playing at Dallas. Now, this is a big game. Dallas is now Dallas is not out of it technically, out of the playoffs. All they need to happen is they have to win their last 3 games, and the Eagles have to lose their last 3 games. So what are the odds of that happening? Los Angeles Chargers, so they're 8th, and they're playing at Dallas, and I like them. They're offensive. side of the ball has been a little questionable, Herbert, but they beat the Kansas City Chiefs in a game that Kansas City really needed. It was a very tough game. They beat the Chiefs twice this year, actually, and they're 5-0 in their own division. So they have a lot of tiebreakers, too. So, they're a team that I don't think they can go all the way, but they are a good team, which is why I have them about number 8. Now, number 7 is San Francisco 49ers. They're also 10-4. And just quietly sitting behind the Rams and the Seahawks and trying to just keep their team together, get all their players back as best they can. I know they've lost 2 key defensive players, but for the year, but still, they're just right there. I don't know how good they are per se, but they have beaten some of the best teams on this list. And they play at Indianapolis, which they should win that game. I think Phillip Rivers came close to beating the Seattle Seahawks, but I think now San Francisco 49ers will be able to watch that film and probably come out and handle Indianapolis fairly well, I would think, but we'll see. You never know when you have to travel across country for a game and how it might turn out. It is inside, though, so that should be helpful as well for the 49ers. And like I said, they're only a game behind the Rams and the Seahawks, so one of those 2 teams is going to lose this week, and they could be tied and actually probably jump ahead of them. I think they have a better conference record, or division record, I should say. So number 6 is the Chicago Bears. They're up 1 spot as well. They're at 10-4. They play Green Bay in Chicago, so that is another tough game, and this has been the most flip-flop division so far in the NFL this year. And if Green Bay wins, they jump back up into first place. So we'll see what happens. I know for the Detroit Lions, I don't know what they need to hear in this game. If it matters who loses, they just need somebody to lose some games so they can come up and make it into the playoffs. That's just for my Detroit fans. But Chicago Bears playing Green Bay. Green Bay is one of those teams. I think they look, like I said just earlier, they look good and then they don't. So I don't know who's going to show up against the Bears. And I never have felt like the Bears are one of the best teams, but they continue to win. So it's going to be probably a close game. And being in Chicago, maybe the Bears win that game, but I really can't say. I'll just wait and see. You know what? I was giving predictions and I gave up. I mean, some of these games, you predict a game, say that there's been games as bad as like if the Texans were to lose the Raiders. There's been games like that this year where the team that should win doesn't win, even though they're 13-point favorites. All right, so the Bears are 6th. The Jaguars are number 5. I moved them up 1 spot as well. And their true biggest test since the Kansas City game when they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and they also beat the Los Angeles Chargers, who are in the top 10 here. They beat them about 5 weeks ago, handily too. I mean, just crushed the Chargers. I think it was like 35-3. But anyway, they got a huge game against the Denver Broncos. This is the game, their biggest game of the year. Honestly, they need to win it because the Houston Texans are sitting there at 9-5. They're going to win. And so the Jaguars don't have really much room to play with. Now, they should make the playoffs without any problem, but winning their division is what they're looking at. So this is in Denver. Really huge game. Denver's favored by a couple of points. It's going to be a tough game. But if they win that game, it's just going to really show how good the Jaguars are. And even if they play them close and they just barely lose. So what I'm looking for is just to see how they compare to somebody like Denver, who's won 12 games in a row. And see, how they stack up as we go into the playoffs. So Jacksonville Jaguars, 10-4, they're at number 5. Now, the New England Patriots, I dropped down to number 4. They were number 2. They dropped to number 4. I could have dropped them farther, but you know what? they were handling the Buffalo Bills for most of the game, and they let them back in. But, some of that watching the game, I think, is correctable. I think it's some of May needing to understand what he needs to do. He's only a second-year quarterback, and he's still making mistakes. I think he's going to look at that game and look at where he could have done something differently, and they probably could have won that game. So I'm going to keep the New England Patriots in the top 4. They're number 4 now. They've dropped down a couple of spots. They're 11-3. They're still one of the best teams. They play at Baltimore. That's going to be probably a tough game because Baltimore really needs to win this game. So the Patriots will have another big game on their hands. We'll see what happens. Number 3, Seattle Seahawks. They're 11-3. I moved them up one spot. Now this is the biggest game, and this game is tonight. There's the Jaguar game against Denver is a big game, but this game between the Seattle Seahawks and the Los Angeles Rams in Seattle is huge. They're both 11-3. Rams are in first place because of tiebreakers, but the winner of this game will be sole possession of first place. And like I said, the San Francisco 49ers are sitting right behind them. So whoever loses is also going to have the same record as the 49ers, with the caveat that the 49ers need to win their game. So you could have a big shift in this division depending on who wins. Big game for everybody. The Rams are trying to lock up home field advantage, and I think they can almost do that if they win this game. The Seattle Seahawks obviously will take control of that situation if they win. So can't wait to watch that game tonight. Number 2, Denver Broncos up one spot. They're 12-2. They had a big win over Green Bay. They were losing that game, and they really came back in the second half and just dominated Green Bay. Kudos to them. 12-2, best record in the NFL. Got them at number 2. He's still behind the Los Angeles Rams, who I just think are the best right now. But Denver Broncos play Jacksonville. Like I said, this is another big game for them. 2 weeks in a row. Though they have played at home, so that's very helpful. But, beating Green Bay, and now they're playing Jacksonville Jaguars. This is another good test for them to see how good they really are. And we'll find out. They've been an amazing team. They got a second-year quarterback. We got 2 teams here in the top 4, the Broncos and the Patriots, with quarterbacks that only in their second year. That's an impressive pair of quarterbacks. All right, number 1 stayed the same as last week when I moved them into that spot. Los Angeles Rams are number 1. They're 11-3. They're playing at Seattle, as we talked about. And this will prove out whether they should stay number 1 or drop out of that position. We could have a huge shakeup depending on if let's say the Rams and the Broncos both lose. Well, that would be a big difference. Seattle will probably be my number 1 team. But we'll have to wait and see. All right. That is a look at the power rankings. Los Angeles Rams, number 1. Denver Broncos, 2. Seattle Seahawks, 3. And if you watch the podcast on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL, you can see the entire list. And I've got their change from where they were last week, their record, and who they play this Sunday or Monday, or even Thursday, as the case may be with the Rams and the Seahawks. All right. Let's look at just 4 of them. I only have 4. Some of these game top 10s, the best games this season. It's been a while in some of these categories. So we'll start with passing TDs. Trevor Lawrence for the Jaguars had 5 passing TDs, which put him on the list as the most this season by any quarterback. Hadn't happened since week 7 when Matthew Stafford, in a win for the Rams, threw 5 TDs. That was in week 7. Before that, Jared Goff had done it in week 2. So it hadn't been done since week 7. So it's been quite a while since anybody's thrown 5 touchdown passes. Well, Trevor Lawrence did it, as well as running in one this past Sunday. Now, there's 21 times this season that a quarterback has thrown it 4 touchdown passes, but only 3 times where it's happened where a quarterback's thrown 5. All right, another one. Moving over to the wide receivers in this game. And this is another one. Hadn't been since week 11 that any receiver had enough receptions to make it into the top 10. Well, we had 2 this week, last Sunday. Amon-Ra St. Brown had the number 4 spot. He had 13 receptions in a loss, unfortunately, for their team. And then Trey McBride had the number 7 spot. He had 12 and also in a loss. So those were 2 receivers that made it into the top 10 this season. Jamar Chase still has the most receptions in a single game with 16. Did that way back in week 7. Now, looking at receiving yards, Puka Nacua has just been on a tear lately. We had 2 players here also in receiving yards to make this list. Not the same 2 as I just mentioned either. That's what's kind of interesting about it. But number 3, Puka Nacua had the number 3 most receiving yards this season with 181 in a win for the Rams. Only 2 higher are Michael Wilson with 185 and Devontae Smith with 183. So now Puka Nacua has 3 of the top 10 spots now. Week 4, he had 170 yards, which was good enough for 4th. And in week 14, just last week, in fact, he had 167 yards. So he is putting some pressure on Puka Nacua. And we'll look at those numbers tomorrow, season numbers, and see where Puka Nacua and Jackson Smith-Njigba stand as far as receiving yards go. Smith-Njigba still has the lead, but Puka Nacua is really coming up here. And then finally, we had 2 people join the list of receivers who had 3 receiving touchdowns. And one of them, Travis Etienne, had 3 touchdown receptions. He's the only one on this list who is not a receiver, whether a tight end or wide receiver. He's a running back, only running back on the list. If I was to say that and had you guess, you'd probably say somebody like, McCaffrey or something. And next up is Kyle Pitts making his appearance on this list as well. So we had 2 receivers this past Sunday who had 3 receiving touchdowns, Kyle Pitts and Travis Etienne. Now it's been done 8 times, and all by different players. No player has had 3 receiving touchdowns twice this season. The closest has been Devontae Adams, who had 3, and he's had a couple of games where he's had 2. All right, let's look at some season leaders here. And we'll start off with the passing yards. Dak Prescott leads the NFL now by quite a bit over Matthew Stafford, who's second. Dak Prescott has 3,931 passing yards to Matthew Stafford, who has 3,722. So he's got a little over 200 yards on Stafford. Goff is third, and I always love comparing these 2 quarterbacks, Stafford and Goff. And then Goff has 3,672. Then there's another big drop-off to, well, it's not, it's 100 yards, to Drake May, who has 3,567. 2 new players on this list, and that is Bo Nix coming in at number 9 with 3,256 yards, and Trevor Lawrence making his appearance on the passing yards leaders in top 10 with 3,210. Only 46 yards difference between Nix and Lawrence. And there's a lot of stats like this that we're going to look at. Trevor Lawrence, and I suppose if I'm paying more attention to Bo Nix, also been stepping up their games. And Trevor Lawrence in the last 6 weeks, the last 5 to 6 weeks, has had some of the best stats of any quarterback in the NFL. So now he's in the top 10 as far as passing yards go. He had those 5 touchdowns last week. Bo Nix at the same time had 4. Patrick Mahomes is on this list, but he's obviously going to drop out of it. He was dropping anyway, but he was down to, now he's number 6th in 6, but he'll drop off the list now that he's not playing anymore. So you do have the same 2 quarterbacks who have the teams with teams with two of the best records, Bo Nix with the Broncos and Drake May. Drake May is number 5 on the list. 2 rookie quarterbacks, not rookie, second-year sophomores, I should say, sophomore quarterbacks in the top 10 in passing yards. They've really had some good seasons. Now, looking at passing touchdowns, this has been dominated almost from the start by Matthew Stafford and continued that way. He had another 2 touchdown passes. He now has 37, which is just getting him close to making it into the top 10 in the NFL all time. He won't make it to the top. He's going to have something like 50. I think it was 55. I'm pretty sure that Peyton Manning had in one year, and then the only other 2 is Tom Brady had 50 and Patrick Mahomes had 51. Those are your top 3, but no one else has ever thrown for 50. But there's several in the 40s, and Matthew Stafford, he's definitely on a pace to put himself somewhere in the middle 40s. So we'll see what happens. His own record is 41, and he did that both with the Detroit Lions and with the Rams. So he's on a pace to break that record at least. Now, second, again, is the quarterback that he swapped teams with, and that's Jared Goff, who has 29 touchdown passes, but that's 8 difference. 8 between first and second is a touchdown difference of 8. And then between second and 10th is a difference of 7. That just shows you how much Stafford has been impressive and why he is the leading candidate right now, even with only 3 games to go. He's the leading candidate for MVP. And, things could change. Josh Allen has been making a late push. He had 3 touchdowns to move himself up to number 4 with 25. Still quite a ways off. He's quite a ways off in the yardage as well. He's throwing more interceptions, but he has been making a late push. So we'll see what happens in the next 3 games. Now, new on the passing touchdown list, coming in at number 5 and tied for actually 5th, is Trevor Lawrence for the Jaguars and Bo Nix for the Broncos, both making their first appearance in the top 10 in passing touchdowns. So again, we have these 2 players who are playing each other on Sunday with very similar stats. It's really amazing to look at. Very similar in yardage, same in passing touchdowns. Just been quite impressive. All right, looking at anybody else here, Drake May is also on the list with 23, the same as Bo Nix. So you got your 2 sophomore quarterbacks in the top 10 as far as that goes as well. Now, in the negative categories, Tua Tagovailoa, 15 interceptions for the Dolphins to lead the NFL in that category. Probably mostly because Geno Smith didn't play, so he stayed at 14 while Tagovailoa has 15. And for throwing 15 interceptions, Tua got benched for this next game for the Dolphins. And I don't know, if you watch that game on Monday for the Dolphins, there's just – hang on a second. My phone decided to start talking to me. But anyway, I don't know if it was Tua. I know it was partly Tua's fault that they lost that game, but McDaniels and the way they were so lackadaisical moving down the field when they were losing. No hurry-up offense until they were down to the last couple minutes. When it was too late. I couldn't understand it, and I never did find out if there was any explanation for that behavior. But also, Tua does not throw the ball away. He gets sacked, and he was getting sacked. It was ridiculous. When he had the opportunity to just throw the ball away, he would just fall down and get sacked. Just terrible. He deserved it. Also, from what I understand, he losing that game didn't seem to bother him too much, and that might have been another reason for him being benched. Now, Geno Smith is second with 14. And like I said, he didn't play, so he might have stayed up there and kept pace with Tua. After that, Justin Herbert, 12. Trevor Lawrence has 11. Now, Trevor Lawrence had 11 3 weeks ago. He's been on a pretty good pace here where he hasn't had any interceptions in the last 3 weeks. Really played quite well. 9 touchdown passes, no interceptions. So we'll see if he can maintain that kind of a streak. After that, you have several players with 11 and then 3 more with 10, including, say, Josh Allen, one of your better players on the list. All right, that's some of your negative numbers as far as interceptions go. Now, quarterback being sacked. Now, this is another interesting one. Cam Ward had a huge lead, and I don't know what the Tennessee Titans have done differently, but he has brought that almost to a halt. He was in the 40s 3 weeks ago, and he's still now at 49, which is good enough to stay tied with number one. But like I said, Geno Smith and Justin Herbert also have 49. So Cam Ward has really been impressive lately as far as that goes. And like I said, I don't know what was different, but he was getting sacked, on pace 6, 7, 8 times a game. And that's all changed. So it's been, very helpful for him, obviously. And maybe they're just going to more of a quick passing offense, more running maybe. But he has been more impressive, moving around a little bit better, and maybe just getting an overall better understanding of the game. You've got these 3 players, Cam Ward, Geno Smith, and Justin Herbert, all been sacked 49 times. Herbert's been on the increase. And Geno Smith, of course, just stayed where he was. But after that, Drake May has 43. And then there's a big drop-off to Mahomes, who has 34, though he was sacked 5 times in that last game. But big drop-off by these players from first, second, and third down to Drake May, then Patrick Mahomes. Then you have the rest of them. Tua's made this list now with 30 times he's been sacked. List you don't want to be on, and again, another reason why he was benched. Now, Trevor Lawrence is on this list again with 32 sacks, but he had a 3-game stretch where he was sacked 19 times. 2 games back-to-back where he sacked 7 times, and then one with 5. But since then, he hasn't been sacked in the last 2 games for sure. He hasn't even been pressured, basically, but no sacks, and I think maybe only 1 in the previous game. So that has changed as well. The offensive line has been playing better. Trevor Lawrence has been getting rid of the ball more efficiently because it wasn't always offensive line. Those games where he's being sacked 7 times, it wasn't always the offensive line. And I tell you what, Jacoby Myers has made a huge difference with Trevor Lawrence. He just knows that he catches the ball every time, and he's where he's supposed to be. And I think Jacoby Myers has been really a godsend for the Jacksonville Jaguars, because not only is he helping Trevor Lawrence out with his confidence, he's also showing these other wide receivers just how it's done. And now with him being able to cross the middle of the field, it opens up Brian Thomas to go down the sidelines a little bit more and just spreads out this offense better. All right, let's check out a couple more here. In the rushing department, Jonathan Taylor is still number 1, but his lead keeps shrinking little by little. Jonathan Taylor now has 1,443 yards. James Cook has 1,415 yards, only separated now by 28 yards between the two of them. And they're still the only, by far, by the way, Devon Achane's third with 1,186, so well over 200 yards behind these 2 players. But James Cook and Jonathan Taylor are still averaging over 100 yards a game rushing. So really have had some good seasons. Now, if you remember last year, it was Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry who just dominated in the rushing yards. Henry had 1,900 and Barkley had over 2,000. Well, we haven't seen Barkley at all much this year. But Derrick Henry has slowly and quietly been moving up this list. He now has over 1,100 yards rushing. He's 5th in the NFL. I mean, it's just been kind of a quiet season for him, but here he is again. One of the older running backs, over 1,100 yards rushing. Pretty impressive, I think. Especially he had an awesome first game, and then after that, it just was like, this guy, there's something wrong. But he's been coming back. He had another 100 yards last week. So he's been an interesting player to watch. All right. Like I said, Devon Chain's third with over almost 1,200 yards. We now have 8 players who have 1,000 yards rushing this season. Kyron Williams was the most recent for the Rams. He's now got 1,030. Next up is Rico Dowdle, only needs 22 yards, and Travis Etienne needs 51. Love to see it. Love to see the Jaguars get 100 to 200 yards rushing in this game, and Travis Etienne will have to get it. He'll be the guy. Tootin is out at least the rest of the season, maybe the regular season, at least 2 weeks, with some finger injury that he got this past week. So he will not be playing. So there'll be more on Travis Etienne's plate this Sunday. All right, that's a look at the rushing leaders. Jonathan Taylor first, James Cook second. They're battling it out for leading rusher in the NFL. Jonathan Taylor, though, has tailed off. He was, as a non-quarterback, was one of those people that kind of was in the MVP talk, not only because of the rushing yards, but also because of rushing touchdowns. And he still leads the NFL, but his pace is really slow. He did get one this past week. He now has 16 rushing touchdowns. Actually, he didn't get any. He has 16 rushing touchdowns. But Jahmyr Gibbs and Josh Jacobs both have 13. So they're not as far behind as they were in the past. And then Josh Allen has 12. Derrick Henry again in 5th with 10, along with 3 other players. There's 3 new players on this list. James Cook for the Bills has 10. So now you've got Josh Allen with 12 and James Cook with 10. So that's a total of 22 rushing touchdowns for those 2 Bills players. And then Kyron Williams for the Rams has 10. Christian McCaffrey for the 49ers now has 9. So those are your top 9 players. There's 5 players with 8 rushing touchdowns, but 3 new players in the top 10 this week. Really, it's an interesting list. You got Josh Allen as a quarterback on the list, and that's the only one there. But Jonathan Taylor, again, continues to hold the lead in rushing touchdowns and rushing yards. All right, let's look at one more category, and we'll wrap it up, and that's rushing yards by quarterback. And this is kind of what helps Josh Allen a little bit be considered, as an MVP candidate. He's now got 535 yards rushing. He's pulled away from everybody else. Patrick Mahomes is second, but of course he'll drop off this list with 422. So Josh Allen has more than 100 yards better than the second best player. Jackson Dart now is the only one on this list that would have any opportunity to catch him. He's got 400 yards. The only problem with Dart is different than Allen is that Allen seems to know how to protect himself. Even he'll hit a guy. Allen's not afraid to hit somebody, but he does know how to take a hit or not take a hit, get out of the way if he needs to. Jackson Dart, I don't know what's his deal, but somehow he gets his head in there every time. And so he had to be checked for a concussion again. So I don't even know if he'll make it to the end of the season, but he's got 400 yards. Beyond that, most of the list is the same, but you have a new one on this category, and that's Trevor Lawrence for the Jaguars has 302 yards. He had a rushing touchdown and 51 yards rushing last Sunday. So now he's got over 300 yards. So another area where, in this area, he's better than Bo Nix. Not by a lot, but Bo Nix can move around as well pretty well. But Trevor Lawrence at number 10, new on the list here. All right, that is a look at some of the top players in the season. Tomorrow, we will talk about the Thursday night game, a recap of the Rams versus the Seahawks. Man, that's going to be a fun game. I hope to see. I'll see it. I hope it will be an entertaining game. And then we'll wrap up some of the season leaders, looking at the running backs as well as leaders in tackles for loss and sacks. And we'll see what else we might get into after that. All right. I appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe on YouTube at Justice Stats NFL. You can watch the video there. You can see all the charts that I've listed. Sorry for the little hesitation. I don't know why my numbers were all right, but I was questioning my own numbers, and I was having to look them up real quickly to verify that what I was telling you was accurate. But we will be looking at those games, that game tomorrow morning when I do my next podcast. Like I said, please like and subscribe. You can also find this podcast not only on Justice Stats NFL on YouTube, but also on Spotify, Apple, whatever app you may use to listen to your favorite podcast. So for NFL Top 10s for Thursday, I'm out. I'll talk to you tomorrow.